This is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the podcast, and we're going to jump right to this conversation because Marques has about 20 minutes, I think, to get to MARTA, to get back to New York late on a Friday after a great presentation. And this is Marques' second visit to the podcast. He's currently, as you know, creative director at Deutsch, and I want to do this differently because the presentation that Marques just came out of kind of went through his whole career, and the theme of it is sort of, I want to put it in my own words, as continuously pivoting and being aware of being a manager or a shepherd of your own career.
It's much deeper.
Right, which I think is a really important thing that they didn't really tell you, they don't tell you in school. Welcome back to school.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this. And first off, how's your day been?
It's been great. It's been incredible to be back at the circus. It's been probably 8 years now.
Yep.
10 since I graduated.
Yep.
Very different, very inspiring. Students still have great work, so that was my coffee for the morning. Good ideas.
It's great. So real quick, when Marques graduated, and correct me, jump in, just conversation.
Yeah.
It's not an interview.
Yeah.
Started off at Fallon. I've been in Minneapolis a couple of years there. Then went art director at Saatchi & Saatchi. Moved to TBWA, Chiat Day. Spent some time. Let's back up. Fallon was worked on Alice.
Sci-fi. Alice in Wonderland for
okay,
sci-fi.
Right. Saatchi & Saatchi worked on Gushers, fruit snacks. Worked on Keystone Light. Moved to TBWA, Chiat Day. Not overly productive.
No, not the best.
Gray, where you worked on DirecTV, which the marionette spot, talking about how there's no wires. Kettle One and NFL. Moved to BBDO. Left BBDO to do freelance. Worked at Joan. Did some stuff for Netflix.
Yep.
And now, after freelancing at Deutsch, you're a creative director at Deutsch?
Creative director at Deutsch now, full time.
And it's interesting because this is a lot of moves, but it doesn't. When you look back at this list, this handwritten list, does it feel like these were pivots, or does it feel like this was a progression? Like what does it feel like looking back at it? And
it's probably more of a progression, really. I mean, I think the thing was every agency was kind of learning for both myself and for what I wanted and what might be next. Between the realm of I walked in with the expectation of every time you have a job interview, this is what it's going to be here. Like, this is the culture here. This is what our goal is. Here's who we're going to be. And every agency has a different version of that word. Here, we're disruptive.
Culture.
Here, we're about famously effective. Here, about this. Here, about that. Granted, I just used two examples of places I worked. Not to say they're bad.
Well, let me just say this.
Yeah.
In your entire presentation, never once did I feel like you were shitting on an agency.
Thank you.
No.
That was never the plan.
No.
But I think
that's not the point. And I think a question came out was, did you become jaded? No, you're not jaded.
No. And that's why I think it's probably a progression more than a pivot, because there was kind of a constant understanding of opportunities at each place and also what I was getting out of those places, and just a general desire to figure out what I wanted.
Right. Well, here's a question for you. So at what point do you sit down with your partner, yourself, or you introspect, that's a verb.
Yep.
And say, okay, wait a second. Am I getting, what is it that's the impetus to light the fire under you to go ahead and pull the trigger to move? Because I think that in a lot of these situations, people, and I know that just people have inertia. It's very tough to pull out of something like that. So was it early in your career that you became sort of a master of your own path? And do you feel like that's even a fair characterization?
I mean, I think a little bit, maybe. I think when I was at Saatchi and we talked about it, that was probably the first time, and that was the first time I had a full-time partner that there was a conversation about it. And
the last time you and I talked on this recorder, you were at Saatchi.
Well, yeah, okay. So, and that was when there was someone else who you kind of go through every day together with and express those things. Like, I'm aware of the times now when a client's been a bitch for 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, and there's the complaining about it. And if you're kind of by yourself, as I was early in my career, that's just kind of how it works.
You use the term bitch to mean a pain in the ass. You know,
Yes.
the term bitch to mean a difficult woman.
They're usually male, but there's been females too. It's the unfortunate part is it's usually male.
So I guess that's a critical part of it, right? So you had that conversation as sort of the debrief moment when you're sitting together and you're kind of figuring out, like, is this really working for us as a partnership?
And once you're aware of the fact that, like, you're both going through things, and I think especially since early on my partner was one of our close friends, it's like you see sort of how much you take work with you outside of work. Mm-hmm. And once you're aware of the fact that you're shifting dramatically in one direction or the other, we can only talk about work when we're out and we're complaining about it. Well, maybe this isn't good for us. Like, maybe we should go somewhere where we feel better. Maybe we're happy that we're making all this work, but that work is one type of work and we want to do a different type of work. Are you creatively challenged? Do you hate walking to this office every day? Are you tired of seeing the same faces?
Right.
Is the commute getting boring to you?
Right. No,
and all of that. I think somebody was saying this I talk about this with somebody about relationships. It's not different where it's constantly work. And you shouldn't think of work as like it's always going to be fun. You should always be kind of aware of the fact that things are shifting and like you need to address them. And how can you rebalance yourself? Also be good for the job, because I don't want to be on autopilot creatively for my bosses either.
Right.
I've had times where I've brought back the same sorts of ideas, because how many times can you be briefed on the same thing and expect to go, here's a new idea for you that's completely different than last year when you asked me to do the same thing.
Right, that's difficult. No, I was on the same account for 3 or 4 years, and it's difficult to come back with new stuff.
Yeah.
This is completely off this track conversation, but you had mentioned at one point in the presentation, and I can't remember what it was, but it was a strategic insight. Mm-hmm. And so do the strategic insights come to you? Okay, so the listener doesn't know that I just sat there trying to concentrate. It was DraftKings, right? So this insight that what was the insight exactly?
The one for the complete brand was the fact that
I know what it was.
Always had yell and sell marketing. It was always money, money, money. The one for fantasy football.
It shows like fake football players, or fake teams, and there's this lack of authenticity. And you guys had to make it feel legitimate and have a compelling sort of understanding of why people play and why people want to do that. So did that come to you from planning? Does that come to you from you and your partner realized this? Like, who has that insight? I don't know if it's a common experience for people to get good briefs with real insights in it. So where did that insight come from?
I mean, I think career-wise, there's been a range of how good strategy is that's brought to us. Mm-hmm. And I think DirecTV was so specific, and DirecTV wasn't necessarily strategy in the sense of positioning, but more strategy in the sense of here is the product feature.
Those are features,
and here's how that feature is good for people. Mm-hmm. With DraftKings, that strategy kind of came to us just as creatives, because there's awareness that the line for DraftKings has for years been the game inside the game, and mm-hmm. it's not meant a ton. I think from what they showed before, which is just people winning money. Right. It's a truth in the fact that, like, anytime you play fantasy sports, you're more invested in the game, and it's another game of numbers and shit.
There's a great moment in that spot that talked about garbage time.
Yeah.
Which is just, everything can change in garbage time for a fantasy team.
And I think that really came from us milking internally, like, how can you get excited about tiny moments in football games?
Right.
And that's what fantasy sports is. Right. And once we kind of hit that nugget, it made it easier, because for DraftKings to not be able to show real football players, which is, a lovely skill set we had on DirecTV, we could pay for anybody. Like, we could get any celebrity we wanted to come work on DirecTV. It was almost like an honor. Yeah. But for DraftKings, it's like, well, we can't show you real football, but we can tell you we know it.
Right.
And like, once we understand that you're into this game, and we can make ads that people who have no idea the fuck we're talking about what it means, mm-hmm. that's totally fine. Like, we want to be the sport and the app for the serious sports fans, so let's just make fun of Cleveland and they're always losing and say things that like totally isolate people.
That's great. So, all right, shifting again. So a lot of the work, obviously, if you're doing your entire presentation, and I would say 95% of what I've seen you do as a professional has been broadcast television or mm-hmm. video. So a lot of the art direction controls ceded to a director. Do you miss doing 2-dimensional work, print work, that kind of stuff? Because you were a very strong designer as a student, I remember. And so how has that sat with you? Is that a part of the career development that you're good with? Or
it's interesting. I feel like even when I was here, there was a level of like, I loved designing, and I was a design major in undergrad and came here and studied art direction and mm-hmm. loved designing and made a book that had a bunch more design in it. I think I kind of got thrust into two worlds. One world was there was still print and broadcast early on. Mm-hmm. And then I also got shoved into this world of like, you make funny ads. And I was like, I do? Because when I was in school, there was like, don't try to be funny.
Right.
Like, there's people in the industry that do funny, and Jerry Graffs are the people that do that.
Right.
And then somehow I ended up working for him. And then it was like, from here on out, you're going to do funny commercials. And I was like,
are you good with that?
Yes and no. I mean, it's incredibly enjoyable. And I also think it's one of the more, there's something incredibly tangible to it, especially for broadcasts. Like, there's something great about social and digital things where you get people to participate.
Right.
And it's harder to get people to participate with TV. But, you know, I went back and looked at a case study for the Marionettes campaign and saw how many people just quoted it, you know, and like the way that broadcast can penetrate culture seems to be easier with either something that has some real teeth in it socially and consciously, or something that's just entertaining. And I think that the ability to make entertaining commercials helps make the levity of the industry, you know, like it's not, we're doing something it's not rocket science.
Well, it's almost paying the viewer back for spending 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, we kind of owe you that. It's like, at least we're going to entertain you for a second.
And then the consciousness of the clients who are like, we got to make this thing all about refreshment top to bottom. Like, well, you can't. Like, it can't just be about you. Like, people don't want to hear your message.
Well, that's a very huge lesson, because clients care about what they make. We have to somehow figure out a way to make that mean something. I mean, I talk about that all the time in school about how my clients that worked on Fujifilm, they develop technology, but no one cares about technology.
No.
All they care about is the end product that technology can deliver.
Right, how it fits into their life, and if they see themselves in the ad, if they're entertained by the ad, if they, you know, like, there needs to be some connection beyond that. And that's the thing that excites me. I do miss the designing world a bit, but I also feel like it's nice to come back to it every now and then.
Have you learned skills? Have you learned how to design type that moves and that kind of stuff?
No.
You're hiring people for that.
Yeah. This is weird.
What?
I was like, I remember the age when I first started, and I'd had CDs that didn't know InDesign, because we just switched over to InDesign from Quark.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I had a designer giving me a brief introduction to Sketch the other day.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was like,
I've heard of it.
I don't have enough time to really learn this.
No, right.
Like, I got a meeting in like 40 minutes.
Right.
But I just need to export this thing as a JPEG. Can I do that? And it's amazing. Like, I love the technology, and I love I love being aware of being able to do it, but I'm also like, man, it moves so fast. Like, you lose track of what the new thing is.
Yeah, but you're still thinking like that. You can still find someone to make it. So what's the favorite part of the job now as a creative director at Deutsch? What do you get excited about when you're on that? Or you take the L
train? Yeah, take the L train in. This is the big shift, because somebody asked me what it's like to be a creative director, and I think the thing that was hard at first was, well, you're in charge of other people's ideas. People bring you the work. You're not making the work right now.
You're not at all?
I am still. Okay. There's certain assignments where I'm writing. There's some where we're not writing, and we're seeing other people's work. The most exciting thing to me is, like, effectively now I just have like 8 partners instead of 1.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because every team brings you a half thought, or what they think's a full thought. And when you see the good thoughts, you go, oh, we can go this way, this way, this way, this way. And building on nuggets of ideas is the same as concepting. It's almost like my concepting has been compressed to 30-minute meetings with teams instead of me going off for half a day concepting with my partner, which is awesome because
you can taste it without having to prep it.
Yeah. and it's the weird thing where you just get the fear before in concepting was, holy shit, like, what if we have no more ideas? We might have any ideas.
You had that?
Yeah, all the time. Every assignment. Like, this is the one you find out that I'm a hack.
God, so many people say that. It's so funny.
But now the fear...
I hear that all the time.
Yeah. Now the fear when we do assignments is, and this is what's shifting in the year of being creative director, is like, first you're like, are they going to figure it out? Like,
same thing with just
do I need to work on it? So then when you get the things back, you're like, holy shit, you brought me a great idea, and like, we can build on this thing. We can make something cool out of it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Have you been a part yet of bringing in anyone into the group, hiring anyone new?
Yeah. We review a lot of books, and I review a lot of art directors' books and writers, and meet a lot of people, and it's been cool to be.
What do you look? How do you look at a book? Like, technically, like, how do you open up a web page? What do you do?
Website, like, if if I'm not in by like the first 2 clicks, like the first 2 things.
So you'll start at the top if it's a vertical list, or the top left if it's a grid?
Yep. Start at top left, go to the top right. I'm my next project person. I don't like pick and choose brands that I want to see.
Okay.
And that's why I'm like, put your best thing, not even best thing, put the thing that represents you the most first.
The thing that represents you the most.
And that's the same as, I guess.
It sets the tone. Well, I've often said that the first piece people look at, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go for it.
The first piece that people look at sets the tone. So if it's funny, then people are going to read the next thing with a slight smile on their face. If it's heavy, then they're going to kind of feel that heaviness as they go through.
Right.
So it's the handshake. It's the first impression.
Yeah. And also I remember, like, this is one of my things when I was here, because coming here and having a design background, a lot of all the professors are like, you'll graduate in 6 quarters and like, you won't need all 8. And I was like, cool, great.
By the way, that we don't do that anymore. Just
good. But I bought it 100%. And when I remember I was in like my 5th quarter, we had an assignment for, it was some like investment company. Mm-hmm. And in my head, I was like, I gotta fucking get this thing right because I need this work in my book to get a job. And I tore my hair out trying to get it right. And that was literally the first time I felt the pressure of graduating early and trying to force it. And I think that idea of like trying to put the work that you think people want to see at the beginning of your book can throw everything off because really then you'll end up, had I nailed that ad of financial whatever, then I'd be working on financial shit.
Right, that's right.
So if you want to put the work that represents you the best and that you would ideally want to do first, like do it. Even now when I update my book, early on, it was like, put the newest thing at the top. Mm-hmm. And now I'm like, if I make new things that aren't as good as the thing I made 3 years ago and don't represent me more, that thing staying at the number 1 slot.
Do you click on the About Me or the extra stuff?
I click on About Me. Extras, that's a long walk. I gotta like everything in there for me to click your extras.
Interesting. Okay.
Extras is...
Some people go straight to it.
Really?
Yeah, because I think the philosophy there is that, like, I want to see the stuff that maybe wasn't an assignment, maybe the stuff that you came up with on your own that's like outside of just like a homework project or an ad project. But it makes sense what you're saying too, because extras kind of means extra, and it's sort of like, well, wait a minute, do I like the real stuff? Can you do Can you do the job first?
I always said like my friends and I have a lot of conversations about like when it comes to rap, like a mixtape versus an album, and then like mixtapes aren't albums, and I'm like, I think they might be the best albums because you don't have to get clearance on music, you don't have to like clear samples, you can do whatever you want, there's no record label on your back. That should be your book. Your book should be the freedom ideas. It shouldn't be the ideas that are restrained by your desire. I get it. You need to have a fucking job.
So your best extra should be in your book, in your main book.
Yeah. I'd rather hire your extras than hire... Right. Because I want to get to know you. About Me is the same. Like, I want to get to know you through your work instead of having to click on your About Me section. Mm-hmm. I should see you when I get to your site.
That's very
cool. That's like that's the person I'd rather hire than the person that has the... That's the person I'd rather hire or not hire, because I don't want you to come work for me if you're not going to be happy here.
Yeah, and if there's if there's sort of a big difference between your About Me and the tone of your work, it's sort of like, well, what's the real person that's going to show up at work on Monday?
Because I can hire you for your work section and then realize you're the About Me section, and I go,
that's really
I don't want you to. We shouldn't be working together.
Very good when they line up. So, what is it about you? What personal trait of yours do you think has served you well so far? And this is a heavy question to start asking more senior people on the podcast. What is it about you that's helped you in your career?
I think my kindness and my collaborative skills. Mm-hmm. Like I get a lot of times it's been difficult for me to kind of make sense of is people tell me that clients like me, and I'm like, am I talented though? Do they like me because I'm talented, or do they just think I'm an enjoyable person to be around? And it's hard to separate the two for me sometimes.
You look them in the eye and listen to them.
Yeah. And
that's pretty big.
They're understood, and I think that they get that I'm not just there to do what I want to do. Right. I'm there to solve a problem with them.
Great.
And that sort of like kindness and collaborative nature is what makes it easier for clients to work with me. And when juniors say, we like working for you and Heather, my partner Heather English, I'm like, oh, like I didn't realize I was making a difference. I didn't realize that it was easier to talk to us, or that you feel like we care about your work, or we want you to do the best work.
Did you have experience with working for creative directors that were distracted or self-indulgent or whatever? I mean, I think it is kind of rare, and I'm not saying this just to kiss your ass, but I think it is kind of rare to selfless is the wrong word, because I don't think you're necessarily like selfless to a fault, but I do think there's something about being able to engage and listen and kind of help solve problems as a collaborator, a teammate. Did you play organized sports growing up? Yeah.
Track, ran relays in track and basketball. But I think there's a big consideration play too. Like my CCO, Dan Keller, I've worked for him 3 times, as you saw in my presentation. Right. And he was
three different places,
and he was CCO at Kirschenbaum, and he called my partner and I to talk, and we were like, he's like, I want you guys to come here, but I don't have anything for you. And I was like, you're not just hiring us because you like us and want us to be in the shit with you. You want to hire us when we have something that we can grow into and we can grow with.
That's really cool.
And that sort of like meeting those people in my career, I think made me more conscious of that with other people. There's no point in me bringing you onto an assignment that sucks, or if it does suck, I'm going to tell you it sucks and we just need to get through it. But I want you to be aware of the fact that I know we're doing some shit together and it's either going to benefit us all or it's not. And, that matters.
Well, I think you've made your own luck, and I'm so happy for you being happy where you are.
Thank you.
And I would love to talk for another half hour. I'd love to talk about do you feel responsibility because of your race? Do you feel like there's anything in the industry that has slipped or progressed?
Yeah.
As far as race relations? I don't know if we have time. Do we have time for a quick answer for that?
I think so.
We have a train to catch, but
I have pre-check though. It's a fly through.
It's great. Does a question resonate with you? Because you were nodding a little bit.
Yeah, I think that it's been interesting because even when I came to Deutsch in a creative director role, I was told that there were people who were there who were minorities who were like excited about that. Mm-hmm. Like they knew that I was like a VP creative director, and they were like, "Oh shit, we're getting like a black person in that role," and having been in the industry for 10 years, I think when I started, there were less of us, in specifically in like starting roles. And now I think that there's been progress in that world of, well, the group of us that came in around then and a couple years later are now progressing to ACD, CD
See, that's
level.
good. The retention's a huge problem.
But I think that's the thing where like there still is progress to be made. But I'm also aware of the fact that like progress takes time, Like I think about it a lot because like my mom integrated her high school.
Whoa! Oh my God!
Right?
Where
in North Carolina?
Okay.
And I didn't know this until I was 24, and we went down for my grandmother's funeral, and my aunt like just said it just offhand, and I was like, "What?"
That's some scary shit,
right? But then I was like, "Well, shit, you were born in a time where white people and black people didn't go to school together." Mm-hmm. But then you also saw
by law, by the way.
Right. And then you also saw the first black president. So like that's a span of 40 years for you. And that's a lot of progress. It's not in the big scheme of things, more needs to be made,
right,
but
sure.
There's understanding of like it's going to take time. So when it comes to the industry for me, I think there are some CCOs that are, minorities. Our CEO's a woman, and like that's still rare, but there's other women that are in more powerful, other powerful positions. Val DeFibrio.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think there's some agencies that put lip service to it that promote minorities like in questionable terms. Even when we worked on the NFL for the 2 years we worked on NFL, it was right in the height of the domestic abuse stuff, and they hired a female CMO, and I don't say that to say she wasn't qualified, but also I'm aware of like the NFL's ability to actually care about issues and then act like they care about issues.
Oh, no, I know what you mean.
So there's some places that I think have tried to put the Band-Aid on those situations or put the like shiny quarter thing where like, look over here. But I think there's progress. And I think, my thing when I was here was always, if we start the pipeline, eventually it'll change. Like if you come in at education level, then you come in entry level, then you go up, because it's not about being black or woman or whatever. It's about you're talented and you happen to be those things,
Yes.
And that's the key. Yes. And I think even like when I was asked earlier if it hindered me or gave me an advantage, I personally have never felt like it's been either, because I felt like, my book is a good amount of, you wouldn't know what race I was looking at my book.
No, you would not.
And I think that's more key for me, is like, I'd rather not be pigeonholed as one specific voice, even if that comes from the sense of comedy. I don't want my comedy to all feel the same, and I don't want my like voice to feel like it's just one person's voice, and I can't talk to
It's a very, very good point for
Everybody.
advertising creatives to be chameleon-like for their brands, to be diverse in their thinking for their own portfolios. I think that's an important point.
Yeah, and I think
For
that's the thing that, to me, that's the opposite of what the industry was, right? There was the idea that only the specific white men could talk to the specific white men, and that women were on brands for women, and black people were at black agencies, and Hispanic people worked at Hispanic agencies, versus the universality of ideas and the fact that that idea can either come from anybody or speak to anybody,
Right.
you know? And I think brands have shifted in kind of learning that a little bit, and companies have learned a little bit how to shift in that. And that, I mean, that just makes for a better, more realistic world. That also, let's get fucking super sappy. I think that's what really unites people, is realizing that there's that many similarities between that many different people.
Well, it's plurality, and I think that living in New York, you feel it every day.
Yeah.
But America doesn't feel it as much. It's getting there.
Yeah. And that's the, you know, one of the things that people love about sports is that sports becomes a universal language. You could walk down the street and see somebody that has on an Atlanta United shirt and start talking about that.
Yep.
Because you have one common interest that you from completely different worlds, and you could talk about that thing.
That's it.
Yeah.
We all feel like we're of the same tribe.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for talking.
Of course, man. I love it.
Can we give out a contact for you?
Yes. You could email me at mgartrell at gmail, mgartrell@gmail.com.
Gmail is spelled Gmail.
That's the one.
.com, C-O-M.
You can follow me on Instagram if you want to be disappointed with my photography skills. Marques Sees, MarquessSees.
That's cool.
Thank
You can
you.
reach me, as always, at Dan's Podcast at Mac.com. And I forgot, as always, to mention the Facebook page at the beginning of the show to like that for links. Facebook.com/DGMS Podcast. The podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and in the iTunes Store. And we're working on getting it up on Spotify as well. Listeners, thanks again for checking out this conversation with Marques. If you went to school with Marques, send me an email. Let me know how you're doing. I miss the group very much. And keep tuning in. More conversations are coming. Marques, thanks again, man.
Thank you, Dan.
Listeners, thanks. See ya. Bye.
That was a great rushed podcast.
I like pressure, man. I like pressure.